Now, Newcastle United fan Lindsay Smith has been banned from attending matches until 2026 due to social media posts which criticised transgender ideology. Newcastle say she has breached the equality and diversity section of its membership rules, which state that the club will protect supporters from discrimination, harassment and victimisation. They say she's also breached its equality policy, which is similarly worded, and Section 12 of its ground regulations, which prohibit, quote, any conduct, act or statement that is discriminatory, including by means of sexual or gender orientation. Now, one of the tweets posted by Smith, which led to a Premier League investigation, read, "You realise that trans ideology is based off a Nazi, right?" So, here to discuss this, I am joined by the author and director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, Helen Joyce. Helen, welcome back to the show. Always a pleasure to see you. This is an odd one, isn't it? Because it looks very much as though the Premier League has a spy unit. What's going on?
I think it's worse than odd. It's actually one of the most sinister things I've seen in the 5+ years that I've been following the gross overreaches of transgender ideology. So this woman expresses, in a somewhat casual and careless way, possibly, but free speech isn't about, your most polished thoughts or speaking perfectly. It's about covering everything that you say, on her own Twitter account, has never done anything, which Newcastle admits, has never done anything at all in the grounds or to anybody related to the club or anything like that. They have no actual evidence of anything discriminatory. They passed this secret dossier to the police. The police came around and interviewed her under caution and said 2 hours later there had been no crime. So they decided anyway that they would suspend her. So I actually think it's they who are discriminating against her. I think they're the bigots, not her.
Well, it's very sinister because from what I understand, they have pictures of her walking her dog. They've tracked her home address. They know her date of birth. I mean, this sounds like the Stasi, doesn't it?
Is they've taken powers that they were given to try to stop the worst sort of football hooliganism, which does require you to work out who the gang leaders are and whether they're coming to your grounds, and maybe even to have barring orders, keeping them out of a city or away from grounds. And somebody, some little tin pot totalitarian somewhere, has thought that that's a great tool that they can use against anyone they disagree with to intimidate. As criminologists say, the process is the punishment. So this woman who has done nothing wrong, nothing at all wrong, whether you agree with what she said or not, that's not the point. The point is she's perfectly entitled to say it. Here they are using this tool against her.
And of course, this is the sort of thing that a lot of people have been saying for a long time, that some of these laws, for instance, the deplatforming rules on university campuses, which were about fascists, are now being weaponised against feminists. And that's, of course, what a lot of people in Ireland are saying about the hate speech laws, that they will be weaponised eventually against holding this particular view. What is it about the views that Lindsay Smith holds, and people like yourself hold, that lead to these kind of this kind of weaponization?
I think the point is that the people who disagree with us hold a belief that requires them to force everybody else to play along. If you think that you're a man who's really a woman, that's not something you can pretend all on your very own. You need women to pretend it as well. And you need to force women to let you into spaces where women don't want you. So it is by its nature an imposition on other people, and that requires you to try to silence those other people when they say so. So what Lindsay Smith is saying is very inconvenient for any man who wants to force women to treat him as a woman. And that's why she has to be silenced.
Now, it's very interesting that you talk about how the club are the ones who are really guilty of discrimination. I was under the impression that since the for-starter ruling, the idea that there are two biological sexes and the belief that there are two biological sexes that are immutable is protected in law under the Equality Act. Am I wrong about this?
No, you're not wrong at all. And there have been a bunch of employment tribunal cases and other legal actions since that have demonstrated again and again that that is the case. So there's now a substantial body of case law that not only can you believe this, which, by the way, is the truth, but you can also say it. You can manifest it. I think the nearest legal analogy is probably Joe Cherry, MSP MP, who was dropped by an Edinburgh venue called The Stand because the staff said she was a bigot for being a lesbian who believes that lesbians are women who like women, not women who like men who say they're women. And they said they wouldn't work there. So she got a very eminent KC's legal opinion and the Stand backed down and let her show go ahead. I really think Newcastle has got the wrong end of the stick here, and I look forward to seeing what happens next.
So do you think this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, if you like? And so far as a lot of people have been seeing this and thinking, how can this really be going on? Might this be the thing that finally turns the tide?
No, I think it's going to take a lot longer. If you look back at previous occasions where the law started to clamp down on bigotry, because let's face it, this is what Newcastle is being. It's being bigoted. For example, when they brought in the Race Relations Act or they brought in the Sex Discrimination Act, it took approximately 10 years for employers and service providers to understand that they actually couldn't discriminate against people on the grounds of race or sex. I'm very worried it's going to take us about 10 years to get employers and service providers to understand that they can't discriminate on the grounds of believing in the reality and immutability of the two sexes.
Now, perhaps, Helen, just to give the other side, there was one fan, a Newcastle fan, who complained about Smith specifically and said, this is a quotation, "If I were trans, I would feel extremely unsafe had I to share a space with someone so openly transphobic. Many of her tweets revolve around the LGB movement, a trans exclusionary and discriminatory movement for members of the lesbian, gay and bisexual community to deliberately exclude and aim to discourage and discriminate against the transgender community." What do you make of that kind of complaint?
I can imagine that some trans people might feel unsafe because they've been told that people who disagree with trans ideology are hateful. It's as if you told everybody who believed in Christianity or everyone who believed in Hinduism that the entire rest of the world was out to get them, and then introduced them to somebody who wasn't from their religion. They might feel scared. I have no animus towards trans people. I just don't think that people can change sex. So I blame that sort of fearful reaction on the people who lie about other people's beliefs, like Newcastle United.
And that's a really key point, isn't it? Because we've seen this bizarre hostility towards, people like yourself and also J.K. Rowling and anyone who stands up for women's sex-based rights. But what do we do when this idea of just dismissing people as transphobic and hateful simply for holding these beliefs is so prevalent?
Well, as I say, racist and sexist beliefs used to be more prevalent than they are now. We just keep having to fight back, and these bigoted people are really going to have to step in line. It will take them time. It will take more employment tribunal losses. It'll take more legal actions like Joe Cherry's. But eventually HR departments will get the message that if you behave like this, you're going to lose in court and it's going to cost you a lot of money. But just more generally, remember, most people agree with me. Most people don't realise what the trans movement is demanding. They don't realise that it's demanding that they personally lie and give up their rights. So once everybody realises that, the great majority of people who know perfectly well that sex is real won't stand for it. I really don't think so.
Well, very interesting. Helen Joyce, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much.